the guided practice section of today's lesson. Let's go ahead and get it started. Cool. Okay, so this is the reading we have for today. I'm going to go ahead and read it and annotate it. And before I get started, though, I want to do 5 seconds of silence while you guys get a piece of paper or a blank Google Doc to take notes on. All right, let's get started. Cool. Many leading Republicans in Congress feared that the presidential plan for Reconstruction was not harsh enough. Believing that the South needed to be punished for causing the war and African Americans needed to be given more rights, they were called Radical Republicans, and they'd hoped to control Reconstruction, change Southern society, take power away from the plantation owners, and guarantee civil rights for former slaves. Thaddeus Stevens was the major leader of the Radicals. Radical Republicans did not like Lincoln and Johnson's approach to Reconstruction. They believed it was unfair to be freed slaves, and it was too easy on the South. Although the Radical Republicans were a small group in Congress, they managed to sway many people after the Civil War and gained a lot of power in Congress the following years. So if you remember, a Radical Republican is the white politician who was supportive of rights, right? Have him pointing. So our Radical Republican is led by, I had underlined it, Thaddeus Stevens. This is the leader of the Radical Republicans. Now, they're a group in Congress. So if you remember, Congress is the body of government that makes laws. Okay, let me switch my ink. Cool. This is a body of government that makes laws. So, out of all the people who make laws, these are people with especially different ideas of what laws should be when it comes to the freed slaves and when it comes to the South. Now, the Radical Republicans, they thought that the presidential plan was not harsh enough, so they wanted to be harder on the South. They wanted to take power away from plantation owners, who is also the same thing as saying slave owners, because if you owned a plantation, you typically own slaves to work it. And they wanted to give civil rights to former slaves. And we won't really see full civil rights given to African Americans until the 1960s. Now, remember, this is the 1860s, 1870s, so almost 100 years later is when they get full rights. So this is to let you guys know that there was a group of people who were looking out for the interests of African Americans at that time. The issue was the popularity behind the ideas was not so great. They believed it was unfair to freed slaves and to be easy on the South. And, this is important too. They were a small group. Very few people shared their opinion. All right, so we definitely annotated it a ton. Let's look at the questions and see what they're asking. So let's see. We're going back here. Let's bring back the reading here. Cool. We can leave it right there. All right. So the first question is, who were the Radical Republicans, and who was their leader? Okay, so let's look back here. Well, the Radical Republicans, based on the very first sentence of the last paragraph, they were a small group in Congress, but that doesn't tell me much about them. Give me 1 second here. They were a small group of Congress. They hoped to take power away from the plantation owners and guarantee rights to former slaves. So that is what I would put for this answer. And then it also says who was their leader, and I had underlined it earlier. It was Thaddeus Stevens. So I would put their leader is Thaddeus Stevens. And then the Radical Republicans were a small group in Congress. And then who, and then I would fill in the blank here, a small group in Congress who wanted to take power away from the plantation owners and guarantee civil rights for former slaves. All right, so that was how I broke down number 1. Let me clear this board so it's less confusing. If you need to look back at any old annotations before I clear the board, you can always rewind the video and pause it to where you need it to be. Oh, let me see. Okay, that should be fine. Yeah. Okay. Let's look at number 2. The Radical Republicans did or did not like presidential Reconstruction. Well, the very first sentence, it says, many leading Republicans in Congress feared that the presidential plan for Reconstruction was not harsh enough. This is already drawing a difference or a contrast between presidential Reconstruction and the Radical Republicans' idea of Reconstruction. So a contrast is the Radical Republicans want harsh on South, and then presidential Reconstructions, they want to be easy on the South. So the very fact that they're different means that the Radical Republicans probably didn't like the ideas that presidential Reconstruction was going to try and enact. So for number 2, I would put that the Radical Republicans did not like presidential Reconstruction. Okay. Let me clear the board. Boom. Cool. All right, there's one more question. Copy and paste a quote from paragraph 1 that supports our answer from the last question. So our answer for number 2, we had put Radical Republicans did not like presidential Reconstruction. So now all we need to do is kind of box in a quote. Well, that's all I'm going to do, but you guys would just literally copy and paste it. Something that supports our answer from this question. I mean, you can choose the very first sentence. Ends right here. That could be a quote of evidence. A different quote of evidence. Could be here. Thaddeus Stevens was the major leader of the Radicals. Radical Republicans did not like Lincoln and Johnson's approach to Reconstruction. So you have option number 1 or option number 2 as really good examples of textual evidence that support our answer for number 2. So the same way that we tackled all the reading and the questions for this guided practice, this is going to be your model for how you're going to do your independent practice. At the end, no, not at the end, at the beginning of the exit ticket section, there's going to be an exemplar of the independent practice, and then you guys will watch that video to see if your answers lined up with my answers. And if not, for you to go back and make some changes if you need to. All right, guys, go ahead and stop the video and get started on the rest of the assignment.